Minister Paul Scott, Militant Mind Militia, wishing everybody happy Kwanzaa. This being the first day of Kwanzaa Umoja, which means unity. We thought it would be a good, excellent time to call for an end to all these petty beefs, this backstabbing, this snake-like activity that's so prevalent in the black consciousness, black nationalist movement nowadays. So we had called for a truce, and that stands for True Revolutionary United Consciousness Everywhere. And we have a research team that is looking into the historical legacy or the historical roots of the beefs that we're experiencing in 2010. Because we feel that we should look at this scientifically and not emotionally. Because the only way we're really going to stop these beasts from happening against people who are really all supposed to be fighting against the same thing is to take the emotion out and look at it scientifically. With your continued backbiting and backstabbing and beefing, scientifically speaking, what is going to be the end result? What's going to be the end game strategy? Because when we put it into context and look at it scientifically, it won't be hard to root out what's a legitimate disagreement, an agent disagreement, or just some Negro stuff. But we have to look at it non-emotionally and scientifically. So we have a research team working on that right now. But if we look at why we have so many beasts amongst the African people in this country, we start with black on black violence, Dr. Amos Wilson, because he has a chapter in the book where he talks about displaced aggression. Displaced aggression. And if we put that in plain terms, it just means that if you're really scared, if you really have a problem with or something is attacking you, like white supremacy, and you feel powerless to confront white supremacy, what you do with that would be direct aggression to attack white supremacy. But when you feel really powerless, no matter how much you scream black power and whatever, when you feel fear or really scared of white folks, white supremacy, you take it out on other black people. And that's called displaced aggression. You run from somebody who you fear and really feel, no matter how loud you scream black power with your fist in the air, that you really fear white supremacy. Because you fear white supremacy, that aggression has to go somewhere, and it goes against somebody who you think you can beat, i.e. other black people, other African people. Now also, we can talk about COINTELPRO, the FBI war against Tupac and black leaders. John Potash is good documentation on the COINTELPRO program. That did have a role in the fighting, the bickering amongst black nationalists. But I think it's been overrated. I think some of us are so messed up mentally by the European methodology that the white boy doesn't even have to show up and we'll still fight each other based on ego. We don't like to deal with ego. We don't like to talk about ego. But a lot of this is not COINTELPRO, it's COINTELEGO. And that has its roots going back to the early 20th century. If we want to talk about how we experience this kind of bickering amongst our leaders in this country. Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, W.E.B. Du Bois. It's no secret that these men had disagreements. Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey. Now, some of it might have been orchestrated by the European. That's no doubt divide and conquer, that old strategy. But a lot of it had to do with pettiness, differences of opinion over methodology, and all these brothers were supposed to be fighting over the same thing. However, these petty arguments really helped destroy their movements. Now, Booker T. Washington actually has something called the Tuskegee Machine, which actually worked very hard to go against W.E.B. Du Bois. And everybody's familiar with the beef between Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois. But the question is, how much of that was really orchestrated by the government, and how much of it was just two black men who, both of them wanted to be the leader of black Africans in America, and that they were just preyed upon. These petty rivalries were just played upon to bring about that end. If you read the autobiography of W.E.B. Du Bois, he even says that he was never a leader of men, so it's very unlikely that he could have sustained a successful movement against Marcus Garvey. It's very unlikely that he had that much power. Now, the reason why Garvey was going against Du Bois, same reason, difference over ideologies, methodologies, etc. So if we don't learn about these beefs in the past, we can't put away the beefs that are going on right now. If you go up to the 60s and the early 70s in the Black Power movement, you see, of course, Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X. These men had disagreements over ideologies, but as you see towards the end of their lives, they both were basically saying the same thing. Their differences became narrow. So just because you have a disagreement with your brother today doesn't mean that as you read more, as you study more, that in a couple of years, you all might realize, hey, we were saying the whole thing all the time. So it really doesn't make sense for us to get so bogged down in these beefs when eventually our children are going to look back and say, well, these brothers were really saying the same thing. Why were they fighting? So that's all our appeal, brothers and sisters. Get with this truth. Talk to the captains of your squads, the leaders of your movements or whatever, and say, get down with this truth movement, because we have too much in common and too much difficulty that we're going through as people in this country to really be fighting over bitterness and backstabbing and things of that nature. Truth Minister Paul Scott, Militant Mind Militia. Peace.